All right, there we go. We're at the other side. I'm just going to percolate my coffee, Robin. So you'll have to accept the fact that this is going to take a while. Right, so for those of you who've seen these before, just again to recount, this is all part of the book research that myself and Dr. Amy Redmond are putting together. And all of our interviews are always live streamed, just because we feel that it gives an element of transparency to all of the discussions that we're having. And essentially, there are some fantastic conversations that we're going to have, which probably some of the insights won't make a book. So we want to create that bank of content, and there really are some fantastic people that we're interviewing, and Robin is one of them. And if I'm brutally honest, Robin, I mean, I've known you for years, but I haven't really known you, which is a weird thing. And when I was sort of preparing for trying to work out, what was my angle and what did I want to get from the talk that you and I were going to have, I was sort of a bit lost as to where I went, because you've kind of done so many different things, and probably unless you were involved in the sort of the technology ecosystem very, very early on, you probably wouldn't know much about Robin Rivaton, because obviously everything is very sort of French orientated, and the 8 books that you've written are very sort of there. So tell people a little bit about you and what you've done, and why why would you think I would necessarily want to interview you for a book about digital transformation?
Thank you for having me, James. Yes, I'm happy to sum up a bit my career. I work as a consultant at first at BCG. Then I moved to the infrastructure business, mainly airports, and I was exposed to real estate when I was the head of the promotional agency of the Paris region. My job was to talk to large investors to help them to set up subsidiary headquarters, R&D center in the Paris region. Most of the time, the discussion ended up by just how I can invest in offices or logistics or any of these assets. And I said at this moment, okay, it may have something on the real estate, and I just dig into this industry, and I decided to approach this industry from the tech perspective, and it's the reason why I funded 7 years ago now real estate, which was at the time the largest prop tech community in France, gathering more than 400 startups. It was really the start of all these prop tech scene, prop tech communities, and it was the reason why we met at this moment with you, James. And I decided to continue my journey exploring the real estate industry, both from the tech perspective and incumbent perspective. I moved to the investor side, being a VC in the PropTech field at Eurazeo. And 2 years ago, I decided to confront my ideas to the real playground, becoming as the CEO of Stonal. PropTech, now quite big. We reached 20 million revenues by the end of the year, and offering a data management platform mainly for asset owners and asset managers. So I can say I explored a lot of several angles to this industry. I also have the chance to sit at the board of several property developers and several large REITs in France. So I know also the incumbent perspective. And yes, I've learned quite some things. As you said, mainly a focus on the French market, but also trying to understand how foreign markets can work. When I was a VC, I made several PropTech investments in Southeast Asia. So I discovered real estate markets in Indonesia, in Vietnam, in Singapore. So always interested by the international and the benchmark perspective. And yeah, quite a good journey, and happy to continue it.
It's got so two quick things. I always remembered when speaking to you, your French accent is very pronounced, and I was going to be very interested to see if the transcription service that I always run on these interviews to capture everything was going to pick up the French, and I was just looking at it now, and do you know what? It's brilliant. I have to say, it's picked up everything that you're saying perfectly.
Okay.
It's a relief for me, but just consolidating down what you've just said. So it almost looks like you've had 4 different journeys. So the first was almost sort of that public governmental type journey around promoting Paris and the R&D sense, which I'd like to come on to. I wasn't aware of that before. Then you've got the did you call it RESTEC?
Real estate.
Real estate, and 400 startups, and that was step 2. Step 3 was obviously from the VC perspective, and obviously the money behind it all. And I'm fascinated by the Southeast Asia bit, which I'm going to come on to as well, because that I think Southeast Asia, amongst 2 other regions, is often missed. I think that there are real hidden gems in that, so I'd like to look at that. And then obviously now Stonal, and that, if I'm not mistaken, that was during their Series B, and obviously you moved from the VC world, and you obviously then went into the CEO position after they did their raise at Series B. Is that right? Just to be clear.
Yeah.
Cool. So talk to me. I mean, you've had such a varied career within this sort of innovation within the built environment. I mean, how have you found it over the many years that you've been involved? Do you feel has it progressed? Are we still in the frustrating period of the real estate industry isn't changing, or has the real estate industry started to change? Where do you sit from the many years that you've been involved? Where do you find it?
I'm quite an optimistic person, so I will see the glass half full, and I would say that today the industry has made progresses over the years, but that we haven't been helped by the zero interest policy, zero rate interest policy. Because yes, it made everybody quite lazy in every sector of the worldwide economy, but mainly in the real estate, because this sector is the most leveraged sector in among all the asset classes. So it made a lot of people quite lazy, quite immune to technological changes, and quite conservative. So it's the reason why I think the future is quite brilliant, and the prospects are bright, because now the full industry, from asset management to property development, brokerage, and so on, have to change radically to adjust with the new context. And the new context is not having high interest rate forever, but it's to deal with climate change, to deal with a crazy amount of capex, to deal with remote work and low offices occupation, a lot of vacancy, new way of life, with people asking for new services, more mobile population. So a lot of things, and I think it's now a good time, because we were in the frustration phase, and I think the next year will be very interesting in this industry.
So you alluded to it a little bit then. What challenges do you see the industry still has to overcome as it goes through a transformation journey? What do you feel still needs to be done?
The challenges are massive, but I would say in my perspective, the most important one is the data challenges. Today, it's all the decision taken by most of the players in this real estate consolidated industry are done on either experience or belief, but not so many decisions taken or based on real data, insights, and real numbers. So I would say that the thing the thing we miss most is real number, and the reason is quite simple. Nobody wanted to invest money and efforts and time to capture all this data about the assets by themselves. The value creation would have been super fragmented, not a single winner. I mean, someone need to do the first investment, but we cannot identify the winner of such investment. So in this case, it's super difficult with the agent's theory. It's very difficult to have someone willing to make the first investment. But now I think the leaders in these industries feel that they need to invest in data to tomorrow consolidate their markets, become the true leader, global leader, and be able to expand from the domestic markets as well. So yeah, I think the main challenge is about data and the necessary investment to know the built world on which we work every day.
So let me make a statement and tell me if you feel this is fair, and if it is fair, how does the industry start on its journey to improve its data? And I'm going to caveat all of this because there are two in January when these interviews will continue. There's going to be two main focuses, and we're probably going to have rather than one-to-one interviews where I've had sort of what I would call the more visionary people coming on to talk to me about their journeys. But in January, it's going to be a big focus on data because I recognize it as being one of the biggest challenges that we have, and probably have a couple of panels discussing data. And then obviously sustainability as a big driver, affordability as a big driver, and productivity as a driver. We're probably going to have some sessions focused mainly on those sort of 3 or 4 areas. But my thesis around data, I think, is relatively simple in that I don't think the real estate industry, and this is a very generic perspective, so I'd like to be argued on it. I don't think the real estate industry necessarily understands what data it is collecting, where it is being stored, how it is being stored, how structured or unstructured the data necessarily is, what value that data, these data have. And so am I being unfair? And am I oversimplifying the data issue that we have?
No, you're right. You're right. Today, a lot of people are not educated enough on the value of data and what does it imply on day-to-day processes to collect data properly, to extract data properly, to structure data. And again, the value chain is super fragmented. So it's very difficult for one player to ask for, I don't know, an on-site monitoring inspectors to respect the specific format or to comply with a specific format to enter data. So at the end, it's a rule of unstructured data, and everyone is okay with having poor data or non-exploitable data, but just having the stamp, and it's fine. So it's a question of education. It's a question of return on investment. Again, one player, one investor, but a lot of people would win from such an investment. So very difficult to being the first to pay, and a question of willingness. So they don't need this data precision or data quality in the past ZIRP decade. So yeah, I think you're right. You are not unfair by considering this approach of data. And regarding the other challenges you mentioned, I'm super sustainability and affordability. I totally agree. But for me, they are not challenges that the industry can deal with by itself. I mean, it's not a challenges from the industry; it's challenges from outside, mainly the regulators, and the today. Everyone in the real estate industry would be super happy to increase the number of square feet built every day or every year. But the constraint is not in the industry. The constraint is in the global population, at the local authorities level, at the government level, and so on. And quite the same for sustainability. I would say the regulation and the rule has to come from government. So my answer to the question was mainly the challenge from the industry by itself, but yes, the industry has to meet with sustainability and affordability goals.
So going back on to one thing you've mentioned in there, and I'm only bringing this up because I've heard it so often, and I've not really ever, I don't think, got a brilliant answer in return, in the sense of the real estate industry understands return on investment. They understand the monetary value of initiatives that they do, and we both agreed that they don't understand the value in the data. So when you said, understanding data and the ROI, how, and this is probably given the work that you now do with Stonal, how can you convince the real estate industry that there is a return on investment on understanding their data and putting in a significant chunk of both time, resource, and money into that entire data chapter of that business's life? How do you work with them on understanding the ROI of it all?
Super good question, and we had a lot of discussions at Stonal and with advisors outside the company to be sure to tailor the best marketing and sales pitch. And I would say it depends on the type of asset owners or asset managers. At Stonal, we cover both what we call public sector and private sector. Public sector are mainly social housing corporations and local authorities for their educational buildings. And these guys never sell their assets, never, or very, very in a very limited manner. So when you are both asset manager and property manager, you understand very well, and that your rents are capped by the regulations mainly, or you don't have rents because you are just a school board, so you don't collect any rents. In this case, you understand very well the value of the data and the ROI, because just a small increase in the efficiency of your capex or your opex, and you have just already create dozens, if not hundreds of millions of euros or pounds per year. So the ROI is super clear. In the private asset managers, when asset management and property management are dissociated, it could be quite difficult to explain the value of an investment in data, and you need to be very specific. And today, our unique selling proposition for our Stonal tool is really to focus on liquidity. We collect data properly about all the documents about an asset, about the buildings, and we help an asset managers to increase the liquidity of their assets. And this is a very limited, I would say, ROI. To be honest, I would prefer to collect more data and to offer more insights and to help our clients to go further. But today, we need to process to advance small at first, and we try to focus on this limited array. But again, it's interesting in my perspective to see two kind of clients with two kind of different organizations with two kind of arrays.
Because you've got the public on one side and the private on the other.
Yes.
So just expand on that. Oh, sorry, just simplify that again for me. What's the different attitudes that they have?
The private asset managers, it could be an insurer, a REIT, I don't know, listed or non-listed real estate vehicle.
And their primary objective with data is understanding the ROI of the data. What's their primary?
Today, these guys will keep their assets from 7 to 12 years, maybe 15, but core and core plus strategies. So it's very difficult for them to invest heavily on data about these buildings, imagining that they will sell them in a very short period of time. I mean, 7 to 12 years is quite short when you consider an investment in data. And for them, it's always complicated. So today, the ROI we find is really to collect properly the documents, organizing the documents, and help them to increase the liquidity of their assets. And increasing liquidity is a real ROI for this private asset manager. But going further and investing about real quality data about what is the main components, equipments of the buildings, the plans, and so on. All the kind of stuff we are able to do in what we call the public sector. It's quite difficult for them because in their perspective, the ROI is a bit further.
Okay, and sorry, just to go back a step. So, sorry, the public ROI is what? Just so I'm clear on it.
The ROI in the public sector is mainly saving on OPEX and CAPEX.
Saving on OPEX and CAPEX, right? That's the bit I missed.
Okay. And it's massive. It's massive because if you are able to save money on these two expenditures, yes, you generate crazy amounts. And
it's a very interesting difference, though, isn't it? Because I mean, it makes your role. At least you now know what that is. But I suppose there is a differentiation between private and public in their attitudes to technology and their attitudes to the ROI from using technology, not just data. Every single aspect of innovation and transformation, you need to realize the differences between the different asset classes, the different owners of all the assets. And then there's a geographical difference as well, isn't there? So do you find that, and it might not be an easy question for you, but do you find there's a difference between what you see in France and the rest of Europe, or do you find that there's relatively similar theories?
Yes, to answer your question, even my distinction between public and private is not totally relevant. I explain. In the private sector, when we encounter an asset manager with internal property management, they could find a good ROI with data quality because they are more aware of the OPEX, they are more aware of CAPEX, and they can see the savings on these two kind of expenditures. So it's not only public and private and the kind of organizations. I would say it's mainly the way an organization or a client is structured with internal property management or external property management. And when you externalize a function, it's because it's non-core. it's not important for you, and you consider that okay, you can trust your third party provider, or you can distrust them. But at the end of the day, it's non-core. Now, I think in the future world of real estate, I think you cannot imagine to have a clear vision on your capex and to know precisely what you want to do, what you want to invest. Because if you want your building complied with net zero, or even just comply with local regulation about energy efficiency, you will need to invest a lot of money, and you can just say okay, it's something I outsource to a third party and I don't really care. So I think again it's due to the laziness of asset management and the fact that they have been able to easily outsource this job and this function in the past years to property managers,
Yeah.
capturing most of the value for them. But I think it will change. So again, it's not public and private. And regarding your question, I would say it's quite similar across several countries in Europe, because the main distinction is again, will you sell these assets in the future, or will you keep them for not ever, but for a very long period of time? And if you are ready to keep them for a long period of time, you are ready to invest in data, even if you are a public entity with you could imagine with a lower productivity or less aware of new technology, with people sometimes more conservative in terms of tech approach. But if you have a long period or long term perspective, you are ready to invest in data, and more specifically in data quality.
Do you think that attitude of long term, more happy to invest, also goes outside of the realms of data into other technologies, or do you think it's just very specific to that data role that it plays?
I think it's, of course, it applies to investment in sustainability, and lot of several investments play. But again, ROI, return investment in data, are quite new, not always proven, and it's all the more difficult to convince someone to invest in it, rather than investing in tangible assets in which you have very documented or audited return on investment, because you will change such an heating system by another, and you will save money, and or just set up LED bulbs, things very known and widely audited.
Okay. I'm going to move away from the ROI and the data discussion there, but I mean there was some really interesting perspectives about what I initially went down around private versus public. You correctly said it's not as simple as just private public. It's actually more nuanced around internal external property management and how that works. It was also more nuanced around, really it's a mentality decision around long-term hold or a short-term hold. But even the short term of holding for 7 to 10 years, it shows the challenges of the asset class. And I was talking about this with Dean Hopkins yesterday, the ex COO of Oxford Properties, who was saying that one of the biggest challenges of transformation in our sector is, even we're talking about short term being 7 to 10 years, and actually that's incredibly long when it comes to being able to challenge and transform. Would you agree? I mean, it puts us in a really difficult position to make changes, right?
Yeah, yes, and again, everything will change in the coming years.
How will that change?
Yeah, in European commercial real estate, the share of office among the asset under management was, roughly speaking, between 70 to 75%. Okay, and offices is the laziest asset class in the real estate. You invest a large check, dozen, if not hundreds of million at a time. You have a single or multi-tenants, but you have long-term leases. And from an operational perspective, you have just to ask to a property manager to collect rents and dispatch the OPEX. And if the building is quite new, to be honest, you don't have to take care of CapEx, and the OPEX are quite limited. So it was just perfect. But it's over. It's totally over. I mean, the time when you invested money in a large office tower in the center of Paris, London, or Düsseldorf, is over. So now you need to focus on smaller assets with more capex, with more operational work, because now you want to invest in leisures, you want to invest in healthcare, you want to invest in multifamily, you want to invest in a lot of class. And imagine you need to compensate an asset class representing 75% of the asset under management. So even if you consider that only, I don't know, half of it has disappeared, you have to find a new destination for 30% of the asset under management. So it's just a crazy amount. And all these new asset class, alternative asset classes, they need more work from the asset manager. And more work, in my perspective, it will inevitably means it will mean a convergence between asset management and property management jobs.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. Can you just expand on that? The convergence of the property manager and the asset manager. How's that going to work?
Just to explain it precisely on a specific example, you want to invest in paddle. Okay, paddle courts, because now paddle is booming in everywhere.
I played paddle for the first time in Madrid about 6 months ago. It was brilliant. Loved it.
It's cool. It's fun. People are ready to pay a crazy amount per hour. It's a cool asset class. You want to invest in it. What do you need? You need the traditional asset manager jobs. Okay, identify future paddle sites and so on. But you need an operator, someone dealing, just collecting not the rent, but collecting tickets per hour, ensuring that nobody let his towel on the court, and a lot of things. And this operator, you cannot imagine to have an asset manager, property manager, and an operator. It doesn't work. You cannot share the money between too many people. So what does it mean? It means that part of the job of the property manager is either done by the asset manager or by the operator. And it's the reason we have seen all the rise of these operating platforms directly owned by, I don't know, Blackstone, for instance, owning Milesway, the logistic platform from Netherlands, or KKR owning an Eclo, and housing a student housing platform in France, and a lot of this stuff. And in this organization, you don't have a PM. You have an asset manager and an operator. And you could, when I say the ROI on data, it could be done by either the operator or the asset manager. It's not super important. But in this organization, you need to be super good on data. And all the names I mentioned, they are super good on data. Because if you want to create value, the value is not only being done by the assets, but it's mainly done by the way you operate these assets. So yeah, I think we will see this transformation of the real estate industry again due to the end of the lazy class of offices, grade A offices mainly, and again, if you are an asset manager having grade B or grade C offices in London or Paris, you know that these buildings will stay empty forever. Okay, it's forever. Just give you a number. I know large asset managers in France owning 20,000 square meter buildings, okay, in the northern part of Paris. The annual take-up rate in this area is 400. Okay, 20,000, 400. 50 years. If you take all the take-up in this area for 50 years, you can imagine to fill the building. So it's over. It's totally over. And now you have two solutions. This building is worth zero as an office building, so you can just sell it for zero. Or you say, okay, this building costed me like 50 million euros. So I would like to take maybe a slice of it. So I will do by myself the value added project to transform the building into a residential one. But in this case, you need expertise, you need data, you need a lot of things that you haven't done when you were or you didn't do when you are just an asset manager, just trying to fill your office building with tenants. So I think yes, the job. I'm focusing on asset management because but I think the job will change very significantly in the future years.
Okay, that's really interesting. So I'm going to go into a different direction now, just to sort of conclude the discussion, because I'm quite interested in the involvement of the venture world and the corporate venture world as a strategy for larger companies to either take on their own innovation strategy in the sense of having a corporate venture vehicle, or outsourcing effectively their investment thesis to third parties to invest on their behalf. In your period of time in that VC world, and now I suppose looking back on it, do you feel that the venture business model is good for the technology industry? So that's the first question. And good is a difficult, obviously, word to analyze, but is it good for the technology sector? And then B, and this is perhaps, I think, a stranger question, but one I think I have a theory at the moment. There is a misalignment between what the venture business model does, which is we want to return a 10x return in, let's say, 10 years for each fund. And then when we talked about the long lifespan of the real estate business, when the life cycle is so pronounced and long, is there a misalignment in terms of expectations of returns in the time frame that a venture business wants the returns by? So is venture good for our industry, as in the technology sector? And is there a misalignment between expectations and reality for venture and real estate, on the other hand?
Yes, super good questions to ask, and to be super honest, if we look at the performance of dedicated venture fund in the PropTech space, the real performance, I mean, people having cashed out money after the bubble of 2020, 2021, the performance are super low. And the fact is simple. Okay, in 2020, 2021, a lot of prop tech companies have merged with SPAC, and on the paper created a lot of value for shareholders. But mainly, all these shareholders have lockup and haven't been able to sell and to cash out their shares at this moment. And all these companies were the direct consequences of the zero interest policies. And now all these companies on mortgage, all the companies on instant buying, all this kind of stuff have evaporated forever. I think it will not come back. So I would say without this kind of stuff, the remaining companies in the field, what are they? You could have pure software company like Stonal, and the cycles are long. You say that, or clients are conservative. The sales cycle are quite long. The market is super domestic, and it's not easy to expand to a foreign market, except the US, which is a larger market by nature, by design. But again, the market is very saturated by legacy tech providers and not many room for new ones. I think about ERD, RealPage, MRI, and all these super large companies backed by PE firms like Thomas Bravo, Silver Lake, or owned by the founder in the case of ERD. There is not so much room to grow for a smaller company. And the other kind of investment are more investment from the hardware stuff. So it's create an alternative operators. But again, a VC is not super competitive to create a super efficient warehousing operator or multifamily operator. Is not super competitive regarding, I don't know, Blackstone or Brookfield. I mean, it's more logical for Blackstone or Brookfield to create the new super tech-powered warehousing operator rather than a pure VC play. So when you look at this kind of stuff, the room really for VC, which is to find a 10x or even a 20x multiple, so fund a unicorn in the space. You have to find one outlier in your 20-line portfolio. You have to find one outlier which will be a unicorn, okay? Which is to have like 20% at the end of a 1 billion company. Today, find a unicorn in the PropTech space. Once you have excluded software, once you have excluded alternative operator or asset managers, good luck. Very difficult to find. So to answer your question.
So let me just interrupt on that point, because I think that's where my worry is about whether it's actually good for the sector, which is when you consider the mentality of a venture firm, which is really of every 10 investments they make, one will be a very good, effectively paying for all of the mistakes of the others. Two, they might return about the same amount of money they get back or a little bit more, and then they expect 7 to fail completely. Is that good for a sector? And I mean both on the technology side, but also on the real estate industry itself, because it's almost fun. This is going to sound really bad, and I don't mean it to, because from an innovation attitude, we're always saying you should understand failure and you should encourage it and we should learn from it. But if every venture fund is expecting 7 companies to fail, we're effectively not just rewarding failure, but we're actually funding failure, which then, when you've got the large real estate industries investing as LPs in these funds, it's like a positive feedback loop of failure. So I'm struggling with the narrative in my head at the moment.
Yeah, I understand your point, but
I'm pleased you do, because I don't.
I understand, but at the end of the day, failure is not a big problem if the people who lost money are not a pension fund. I think at the end, if money has been wasted, the money comes from, I don't know, billionaires or family offices. In my perspective, it's part of the Keynesian multiplicator, and it's not so bad that sometimes money failed. The problem is that when the money has been invested from a pension fund or people just representing all the savings of individual households. But it's not really the case in the VC industry. It's a soft bank lesson. At the end of the day, the money from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia sovereign fund has funded low fare tickets on Uber for 3, 4, 5 years. It's not the end of the day. But to maybe just to complement my perspective on the sector, the other alternative, and we will circle back to Southeast Asia in this perspective, is to try to create B2C players, large B2C players on non-yet structured markets. I mean, it's super difficult to create an instant buyer in the US because the brokerage market in the US is super, super good. It's not good for the consumer, but it's super well organized. And when you see the latest fine from the regulator on the brokerage firm in the US, to be honest, I think it will change nothing. The sector is super protected and so on. So you can create a player when you have zero interest rate policies. It's possible, but it's not the case anymore. But you have such similar opportunities in Southeast Asia. I just give you the example of investment I made. We have invested in a company which is the second largest portal in the region, but it's not only a portal. Okay, it's not only a classified portal. They also do brokerage. They also do access to credit, mortgage brokerage. They also do rental and all this kind of stuff because the sector is not existing. I mean, in this region, the brokerage industry is just nowhere. It's just the beginning, and today people have ever built their homes by themselves, and now a new emerging class, middle income classes, is emerging and is asking for someone else to build their homes. So the sector is nascent, and in this perspective, on significant or large enough markets, I'm talking about Indonesia, so 120 million inhabitants market, so quite big. It's also the case in India. It could be the case in Vietnam, and even if the market is 80 million, but it's not the case, for instance, in the Philippines or Cambodia. But in these markets, you can have this B2C play, which can create VC compatible return, but it's it's very specific.
Yeah, it is, but it's also where the opportunity is. And you and I share a very similar perspective on those, as you call it, nascent markets. And I've often called them underdeveloped. I think nascent is probably the better word. It's much more flattering than the words I were using. But I've often felt the same about South America. I felt the same about Africa, and I was always a first mover in those markets because I realised there were big, significant real estate industries there, but there was a very much a lack of a technology sector. And you're right, Indonesia, Taiwan, all of Korea, South Korea in particular, have got incredible technology markets, and they've got significant real estate markets. And actually, take Indonesia, with a population which is only a little bit under the US. you've got technology solutions in there which never need to come out of Indonesia, and they will become potentially the unicorns of tomorrow. So, I am in total agreement with you. I just never looked at it from a B2C play, I have to say. I hadn't gone that deep into it, but what you're saying makes sense. I mean, take Argentina, for example. They were moving to a fixed fee residential model, similar to how, for example, Purple Bricks were doing it in Australia, UK, and so forth. Because their broker model in Argentina was not sufficient. It was very, very basic in the way that it worked. So I get what you're saying. And there was actually one of the only unicorns in South America was in fact a very traditional classified model, portal but classified ads model, which was just absolutely gigantic across all of South America. But even that in and of itself was like a Web 1.0 solution, but it fit that market, and so there's easily an opportunity for people to come in and disrupt a unicorn, but a very old unicorn. So what you say is absolutely fantastic. Okay, Robin, I'm gonna have to end it there because I'm actually gonna have to disappear myself and work with all that. But I just want to really say thanks ever so much for all of your insights, and I want to conclude on one thing, which I think was almost one of the first things that you said, and I just want to make sure we don't miss it, which was you talked about one of your frustrations within the industry is that decision making by leaders was made on experience and belief, and I think you're absolutely right with that, and it's not enough has been done on the data element, and I think one of the elements of leadership within our sector was that beforehand leaders were expected to make the big calls. They were expected to listen to input from everybody, and then ultimately they had the call for, he or she as the leader of the firm would say, this is what we're going to do and this is the strategy we're going to make. And there's a lot of reading that I'm now doing, which is talking about, the leaders of tomorrow are not going to be the leaders who make the big decisions, but are going to be the leaders that make the best questions. And so in order to make the best questions, you have to understand from the data that you've got. So you can base it not only on your beliefs and your experiences, but ultimately it comes back to a foundation of data underneath. So I hope that's a really nice way to end the discussion. But just publicly, I just want to say thanks so much. And I'm going to end the stream now. So Robin, publicly, thanks very much for all your time.